All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6:00 p.m. and we will call the Hudsonville Public Schools Board of Education work session for February 26th of 2024 to order. First up is approval of our agenda.
Move that. That's good.
Motion by Nick with support from Dawn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Recognition of visitors and hearing of people present.
Glenn Smith.
Pat, can you turn the mic on?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I attended the Sex Education Advisory Board meeting last Tuesday, and the way I understand it, this board exists to protect the rights of parents in overseeing the sex education of their children. Its purpose is to ensure that Hudsonville Public School Board approves of and the parents are fully informed of all sexual education content taught in our schools. Much of the content that's being proposed for the reproductive education part of our website is administrative in nature. The SEAB membership list, member selection rules, bylaws, and even survey results and opt-out procedures are secondary to the purpose of ensuring parents' rights to be fully informed of their children's sex education content. You recently agreed that oversharing at the board level is absolutely necessary to rebuild trust. Our parents deserve the same transparency. Parents should have full access to what their children will access. Technology is a wonderful thing, and posting the actual grade level sex education content onto the website is not that difficult. The work of updating the website, occasionally adjusting to the gaps in schedule or concerns over parents wanting clarification of course content is a reasonable and necessary part of ensuring transparency and integrity in a school district that serves 6,500 children from 3,400 households. If, for instance, parents don't know that oral sex, anal sex, and hand contact will be discussed in 7th grade as part of STD lessons, then the permission process is not legitimate, and you can have no confidence in your opt-out statistics. Please direct the Sex Education Advisory Board to share entire course content for all grade levels on our website. The entire community is rightfully invested in ensuring the rights of parents, present and future, to be fully informed and respected in overseeing the sex education of the children of Hudsonville Public Schools. Thank you.
Rich Hardiman.
Good evening, Chair Hooper, Board, Dr. Vanderjack. Thank you. My name is Rich Howdeman. I'm at 700 East Sternberg and Norton Shores, but that's where I work during the day. I'm your Community Affairs Manager for Consumers Energy. You're actually serviced out of our Grand Rapids Service Center over on 44th and Clay area. Yeah, I just wanted to come in real quick and talk about, just introduce myself for one thing. I can definitely help solve problems if they exist with the services we have. Great liaison between yourselves and our staff if we have issues we need to solve. So I also want to talk about some of the things we're up to for the next 5 years. We plan to invest $1 billion a year in our grid distribution system statewide. We have about 2 million customers electric here in Michigan, and we only have Michigan customers. We generate and serve all of our customers here in the state of Michigan. And the last 4 years have been the windiest in record for the state of Michigan, and it's on us to keep up with it. So we're just doubling down on our investments, trimming trees. We're going to see Trees Inc. and other tree contractors out a lot over the next 5 years and probably beyond. But that's how we intend to try to battle that. We don't want any single event in the state of Michigan to put out more than 100,000 customers at a time, and for not more than 24 hours. So that's not happening today. We want it to. That's what we aspire, and we're also really trying to get more competitive for our residents and businesses. We also want to be the top tier first quartile for rates in the Midwest by 2028. So we have a lot we're working toward, and we're excited to do it. You know, I can't have my brother and sister-in-law who have kids here at Hudsonville yelling at me because the lights are out and they have to figure out what to do with them for the day. So that happens sometimes, but we're working on it. But also, I just want to talk about, you may have heard about the Campbell plant's closure next year. There have been concerns about that. You know, is Observatory Power, is Ottawa County going to have lights? We're going to take care of you. We have purchased the Covert Natural Gas Plant. It's in Van Buren County. And that's online and fully running, and we'll be backfilling a lot of what Campbell has. Coal is becoming very expensive to operate. We do anticipate saving our customers about $600 million because of the coal closure. Natural gas, the footprints are a lot smaller. You pipe in the fuel versus trucking it in from out west, and there's just a lot less to it, and it burns a little cleaner. So it's a better way to go for the future, but coal was wonderful while we had it, but we're moving forward in our energy journey. So, but we'll take care of the employees that are out at Campbell, and we'll make sure they stay employed. We will not lay off anybody in the process. And just thank you for letting me say a few words tonight. Thanks a lot.
Aaron Reed.
Greetings, board. I hope by now that you have heard of the name Nex Benedict. I know the Hudsonville bubble is strong, so if you haven't, let me inform you. Nex was a non-binary sophomore at Owasso School District in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, I have to say was because Nex was assaulted in the bathroom by a group of older girls, and the next day was rushed to the hospital and died because of it. Now, I know this is an extreme case, but I can promise you I have sat with our students who have said that that same harassment and bullying happens at our schools. I encourage you to think about that. Think about how throughout this poor student's life, they're bullied and picked on, and it gets to the point that there are assaults on the school ground. That is horrifying to me. And it's not unique. So I encourage all of you to think about what that means. What that means here in Hudsonville, where we still have that harassment and that bullying, and thank God it has not reached that next level yet. So what are you going to do on this board to make sure that doesn't happen? And if you are not, there's a saying that goes around that you need to be prioritizing the safety of our students over the comfort of adults. And I will add that that is the comfort of bigoted adults. And if you are not willing to set aside any sort of personal preference, religious belief, political belief in pursuance of the safety of our students, you are not fit to be in the seat that you are sitting in. Please keep that in mind as you are looking at SOAR. This is exactly the type of thing that was being discussed, talking about harassment versus bullying. What we do here matters to those kids because it sets the policy, it sets the tone. And you've heard me up here many times telling you things like when you set the tone of acceptance and love and kindness and pride flags and acceptance stickers and safe space stickers, it lowers that threshold for every student, not just our LGBTQ plus students, but those are the ones that are at the most risk. So I encourage you to use your power to protect those students, not this comfort of adults. Thank you.
That's it.
All right, next up, we'll move on to our discussion items. And up first, we have our elementary math textbook purchase recommendation. So, Amy?
I am so thankful this evening to have a team of teachers here with me this evening who have juggled around parent-teacher conferences and will be leaving as soon as they're done here this evening to help me present 2 years of work, intense work around the recommendation this evening for an updated math curriculum. Let's see if I can do two things at once. So I will get us started and then kind of turn it over to each of the teachers for the contribution of a couple of slides here this evening, and I'll have them do an introduction when they step forward for their portion of the presentation. So this evening, again, we are coming to you with a formal presentation about the process that we've gone through as a math committee that started back in January of 2022. You do have this slide deck. Robin shared this with you about 20 minutes ago, as well as some attachments in your packet. And we'll walk you through making sure you know where to find what you need. Back in January of 2022, a math committee formed, and this was intentionally a diverse group of elementary teachers who were really wanting to take a look at going through a formal curriculum review. We are still using a 2013 version of what's called Math Expressions. That is the board-approved math curriculum at the elementary level. And many aspects of the curriculum were going to be going away. So a lot of the online access we were going to be losing access to because it was so old, as well as just wanting to really do a refresh of some of the latest research and instructional practices that we want to ensure are happening in our classrooms. We have elementary teachers, so this is an elementary focused team, and elementary classroom teachers, resource room teachers, a school psychologist, a resource room teacher, so really those who loved math, and we were even really specific to invite some people to be on the committee who it's not their favorite content at the elementary level. We wanted to make sure that we were getting all perspectives as we moved forward. And we really came to a conclusion pretty quickly that we wanted to do some learning together and dive into the research. Those are some of the first steps of our curriculum review, to look at data, but also what's the latest research say. There was some opinion at the table, like, can't we just do the updated version? I mean, this was in 2022. Everybody's tired from COVID still. Like, can't we just do the updated math expressions? Wouldn't that be easier for everybody? And so we did our due diligence and kind of walked through, let's go ahead and do some research on best practices, and then let's take a look at math expressions, the new, I think it's 2023 version, I don't even remember now because that ship sailed quite some time ago. But we then moved forward with some investigation around that. We also really landed in a place of really believing and knowing that it's not about a curriculum. If it were, everyone in the country would be using one math curriculum and all students would be achieving and outperforming other countries in the area of math. And we know that's not the case. We know that it is about the instructional practices and the knowledge and skill of the teachers that are instructing our students each and every day. In April, then we moved forward with some intentional learning around visible learning in mathematics. And that was in conjunction with one of our math consultants at the ISD. So this math committee decided to move forward with learning in those areas. As a result of that learning, we arrived at a place of really wanting to ensure that we had solid in our minds as a math committee what it is that we believe we want our students, what we want our classrooms to look like, sound like, and feel like. And so in your packet, you have an attachment that is our values and beliefs around what math classrooms should look like, sound like, and feel like. And then we really prioritize from that learning and visible learning in mathematics, we prioritize what we called our big rocks, right? What are our big rocks of instructional practices? There's lots of things we can do instructionally in a classroom to impact learning, but what are the things that we really value that align with those values and beliefs that we want to make sure are happening in every classroom on a daily basis? This is all research-based, so you see student discourse there, that's student talk. Next to it, you'll see that it says 0.82 effect size. That is a high effect size. Anything with an effect size, this is based on meta-analysis, so again, founded in research. But this is a meta-analysis saying that anything with a 0.4 effect size or greater is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. So we wanted to really prioritize what are those instructional practices we want to see happening in all of our classrooms on a daily basis. And this was then going to be leading us into professional learning because, again, how do we prepare our teachers, even before we choose a curriculum, about what we want to see happening in the classroom to ensure, regardless of the curriculum, that these are the practices that we see happening.
All right, I'm going to step in next. My name is Holly Miller, and I teach second grade at Bauer. And I am on the math committee, and I've had the opportunity to pilot this past year. So our next steps, so we went through this meeting together as a committee. Once we got to March, it was time to finally look at the curriculum, and that was kind of the exciting part. So we used something called Ed Reports that looks, a company that provides kind of a free, non-biased ratings of the curriculum. Kind of looked at those, and there were 4 that rose to the top as being really quality curriculum that we would look at. And one of those was our current math expressions. So one of those 4 was what we currently have. And we sat in here and we had 4 tables out. We dove into each of these, all of the curriculum materials, and we used something called the EQUIP rubric to rate each of them. So it was a way to quantitatively look at each of those and come out with some numbers that really looked at what was best practice. And at the end of that, there were 2 that stood out as being the best options for us to pilot. So our first phase of the pilot started in May of last year, where we chose one of the curriculums, illustrative mathematics, and we had an opportunity to go to Wyoming Public and view classrooms where they were teaching this in their classrooms, an opportunity to talk to some of their math coaches, teachers, and see it in action and see kids using it, which was really exciting. Then we came back, and in August, we dove into that, and we started our year with that curriculum in the beginning. So we spent the first kind of month of school in illustrative and had an opportunity to teach with that. And then we all of the teachers that were piloting were able to rate the curriculum. So how we felt like our students were doing, and our students gave us a lot of opinions too, for sure, and how the teachers felt based on a set rubric and that we collected that data from. And that was our first pilot.
And then we moved into the second phase of our pilot. I'm Becky Heilman, and I teach first grade at Forest Grove Elementary. So then we moved, after we went through illustrative, we then, in September, went and visited Kennewick Hills Public Schools, and were able to spend the morning listening to their staff, listening to their math curriculum coach, and really being able to talk to the teachers and see bridges in mathematics in practice. Sorry if I did not say that first. And we were able to observe it and see what was happening. So then we came back into our classrooms, and much like Holly said, we then took the Bridges in Mathematics curriculum, both that and Number Corner, and we began piloting this in our classrooms. So we then spent the next month as a pilot team digging into a unit and really teaching our kids and getting into some good conversations with our kids. And same thing with illustrative. We then came back into this very room as a pilot team and as a math committee, and we went back into our rubrics, and we really got into the data and started comparing the two between illustrative and Bridges. And from there, we really looked to see which one had the higher scores, both with what we were looking for with our effect sizes and also as pilot teachers as we move forward.
I'm Julie Reichschneider. I'm actually a special education teacher, resource room teacher at Georgetown Elementary. And so I had the privilege of not only being on the committee, but then also team teaching with a first grade teacher with inclusion students in the classroom to see not only how it's going, but also how my special ed students are doing with different curriculums also. So that's been fun. We then also, on top of the pilot, also wanted to do some professional development district-wide. Just like we talked about, it's not all about the curriculum. We want to make sure our teachers have all the best teaching resources, instructional practices to use while using whatever curriculum they may be using, and how to teach kids. And so from that visible learning, that book study we did, those big rocks that Amy talked about earlier, we then as a committee also pulled those and focused on those. We would focusing on those all year during professional development, those early release days. With teachers, we have developed some professional development with the help of those ISD coaches, Mike Klavan and Betsy Roloffs. They have come and helped us develop some of that PD, and we have been each time focusing on one of those instructional practices to help build up some of that. Even now this year, the teachers can take that even before, getting to a new curriculum, trying to get some of those instructional practices into place. That will continue for the rest of this year. We have a couple more PD days listed already for this year, and then we foresee this professional development continuing in the next year and beyond. So not only to continue the instructional practices, but also when we get a new curriculum, if we get that new curriculum, the training that all teachers would need to make sure that they understand it, can jump into it and know all the different pieces, and do their very best at teaching our students. We did make a little video that kind of this is the Bridges in Mathematics that rose to the top that we've been working on, that kind of shows the different pieces. So as Becky was saying, there's number corner, and then there's the actual curriculum. So kind of seeing in action some of the kids and what they're doing. How do I get to that from here? We probably have to go out of it. Oh, there it goes. I couldn't find the mouse.
So now maybe we have 2. All right, and 3. And 4. Now your number. Oh, is it exactly 4? No. Is it exactly 3? No. So we talked about last week. Do you remember last week, Brock, we talked about how we would go to what was closer. And would we say that 3 is closer, or would you say that 4 is closer? When you're your answer, you put your thumb up so you can share your thinking. Roll the number up to a 6, and a 6 in my top row, and double it. 6 on the bottom. Now I'm going to find the total. What's 2 double 4? Let's say the addition equation together. 2 plus 2 equals 4. X minus 2 equals 3. 0. Seven minus 0 equals 7.
As you can see, we have some master teachers and highly engaged kids in our classrooms. That gives you a little bit of a sense of like what we want it to look like, sound like, and feel like in our classrooms. Lots of voices, student voices being heard, lots of exploration, lots of conceptual understanding being developed through use of tools, et cetera. And so those are some of the big rocks, if you will, and the big ideas.
What grade was that?
Gosh, there was second grade, Holly, there was first grade, and there was some kindergarten and some third or fourth grade, yeah,
Okay.
which were the equivalent fractions, I believe. So at this point, then we were to this fall, where the district team provided feedback on Bridges in mathematics and compared that feedback from both of the curricula, Bridges in mathematics as well as illustrative math, and really landed on that final recommendation. We revisited that EQUIP rubric that Holly spoke about, and really landed in a very comfortable place of saying Bridges really outscored using those subjective measures, as well as the overall feedback from the pilot teachers. That is the place where we then began to prepare for this evening. And our formal district request is really on behalf of the entire math committee and the math pilot team. We'd like to recommend the adoption of Bridges in mathematics curriculum for all K through 5th grade teachers for beginning implementation in the 24-25 school year. The total cost is about $105.89 per student. We do have the potential for some grant funds to potentially offset some of the cost for this particular purchase. The ISD is going to be applying for some funds through a consortium for some of the latest research curriculum resources, but we're at the very beginning stages of noting whether we will have any access to those funds or not, but it's definitely worth noting. So. You'll also have in your packet the typical, if you will, textbook curriculum adoption evaluation rubric. This goes over 3 different curriculums with the ratings and the overall cost. That is kind of the typical format, but this has been such a large undertaking by our teachers and by the overall pilot team and the math committee that I felt like the due diligence was really to provide a larger context than just a few pieces of paper. Are there any questions that you have for any of us here this evening?
Just curious about parents' input and student input as far as, for the kids that are in the pilot, would that be, they're just a select group of kids that are going through this process?
There's about 30 teachers across the district,
Okay.
so if you multiply that by 25, Dr. Vanderjack, what's that math real quick?
Wow.
You always help me a lot of students. But do you want to speak to teacher feedback parent feedback and student feedback?
I would love to. So in my classroom, I have 18 students, and I wish I had done a survey of your feelings towards math at the beginning of the year, after illustrative and after Bridges. I can tell you that there's not a student in my classroom right now who tells me they don't like math. I just came from conferences tonight, and it was so fun to share the data with parents, and then to hear them say, my child did not like math in September, and they love math now. And that speaks for itself. Even one of my highest students, who actually Dr. Vanderjack had talked to him a couple weeks ago, and saw him doing Number Corner, and we were sharing with them what we were doing, and she raised her hand and said that she liked it because it was challenging for her, even though she's my highest student. So I feel like it's meeting the needs of our students in a way that is just really exciting for not only us as teachers, but for the kids. So they're enjoying it, and it's really fun to see the growth that they're making as a result, and their deep understanding of number sense, not the rote solving equations, which we haven't done that. But they can solve equations way better than I've seen in previous years.
I can mirror exactly what Holly said with like the passion with my first graders. Again, first grade math is fun in its element, but already through my parent feedback, I again just started conferences. We are just doing night 1 tonight. And to hear all the parents come and say, math is my kiddo's favorite part of the day is something really special because, again, while I like math, I am definitely on the voice of the committee that I'm really an ELA kind of person. So for me, math this year has actually been fun to teach, and my students are loving it. We've been really, really transparent with parents, letting them know all steps of the pilot, since they give us their best gift every day when they send their kids to us. So we want them to know that we are doing our very best to bring their kids in and really kind of let them be a part of this too. And we've just gotten great feedback both from kids and families so far.
I was gonna say, we're writing reviews right now and writing, and we got ideas for what we could write about. All we got on my students recently and said, we could write about bridges. And it was just great, and we're all like, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, so, what kid wants to write a review of their math?
Anything you would add?
Yeah, I think, like I said, it was nice to see being able to team teach, because I was, you never know, like, how special students and the different varying levels of what they would do, especially because it is a lot of exploration, and we talked about that having effect size of 8.82 with the student discourse. Sometimes that can be very hard for students with language difficulties and that, so I was a little hesitant, wasn't sure, and my students have actually flourished, the ones that are in that room. They're, like Holly said, the high ones have challenged, but there's also the way things are set up. There's an entry point for every student. So because they're all kind of answering the question at their level, but everyone's noticings and wonderings all account, and then it sparks an idea for someone else. So that talking actually has helped them because they're hearing all of the ideas of their peers, not just the teacher talking at them, and that they seem to sometimes jump on more of something that their friends said made more sense to them than just something that the teacher said. So it's been neat to see how that has kind of pulled them up. And you also noticed in some of that video that those workplaces, there was a lot of manipulatives and building and exploring with like dominoes and Unifix cubes and all these things. That's just huge for these students that may struggle in math to have that conceptual learning and see that. It's not just paper pencil that sometimes just was foreign to them, those numbers, but now they're seeing it all built and put together, and it really has been really good for students of all levels.
It sounds like our old curriculum was 10 years old, so it sounds like it really needed
The
to be updated.
2013 version, yes.
The cost, I'm assuming, even if we didn't get grant funds, the cost is not a factor for this, because it sounds like it's a wonderful program, lots of active learning strategies, which active learning is, as you guys all know, is fabulous for students getting them involved than just the paper and pencil.
Absolutely,
So-
absolutely.
But
So
the cost is not an issue, correct?
It's budgeted, right?
Yes.
It's budgeted.
The nice thing is it provides us with all the materials, like we're so used to as elementary teachers going out and having to, pick up these things to add, and it's all provided for us, which is we really appreciate that it's, we have all these boxes with all these materials, which is awesome, like just to have all this stuff for us.
That is, so for all the active learning, it gives you all your supplies for
Most of it.
105 per student.
Most of it.
Wow, that's really great. That's great.
That's really part of the answer for the budget. I mean, for a whole curricular area and to get the materials. When Amy and I compared it to like one AP book is $175. And that could be used as a classroom set, but this is for essentially all the elementary teachers, so pretty economical when you look at it that way.
And is this through fifth grade?
through fifth grade, yes.
So that'll be incorporated in the 5-6 building as well?
Correct, all fifth grade teachers, yep.
So picking up on Dawn's point, can you talk about how you bridge to the middle school and how they're involved, what they see, what we're doing at the elementary school and how it fits or doesn't fit, or can you speak to that a little bit, or?
I can. Are you good with me handling that one? Okay. Really, there's a vision. So the elementary math committee has been so successful that we really envision, my vision is that would expand to a K-12 math committee to really be able to continue that vertical articulation. We've already started some of the vertical articulation conversations from 6th grade all the way through high-level courses at the high school. So the middle school, high school have started some of those conversations through our professional learning communities work during professional learning. But that extension and that vision has been, how do we bridge that, to use your word, Ken, bridge that in between elementary and middle school, and that's really with a K-12 committee. We're doing something very similar with ELA in hopes of increasing teacher voice in all of these decisions, being able to be really reflective of what is our current state, both with achievement data, but also teacher need. What do teachers need to be successful and allow their students to be successful and ensure that me and my office is really tending to all of that. And so creating these K-12 committees to address that, like what's our current state, like I said, from achievement, but also what the teachers need, to then what the desired state is, and being able to then plan accordingly, right? We couldn't come to you with this type of purchase at elementary and one at the middle school and 2 textbooks at the high school, but to be able to make decisions as an entire district to ensure teachers have what they need for student success.
Now, you mentioned that you're having conferences now and the parents seem to be thrilled. How easy is this for parents to help their kids at home with this thing? Because a lot of times I hear, or I've experienced, well, that isn't how we learned it. So how does that play?
I'm happy to jump in, but if anybody has some thoughts. So it's not easy. Math is taught differently, and because of the nature of all of the hands-on materials, that's that conceptual understanding. This is where we are also learning from other districts who are further along in this process of adoption of Bridges in Mathematics. One district in particular, Kenowa Hills Public Schools, they said that they weren't sending home homework in the first year, but they were having some intentional communication with parents, videos, and intentional communication to inform parents about this is the way that math works. That ties to a SOAR 5 goal around just increasing parents' knowledge of the latest research on ELA instruction and math instruction. So it's not easy, I guess, is the easy answer to your question. I think that can be accomplished with intentional work, though, from continued committees and working with our administrators to say, how do we really come alongside parents so that if a student comes home confused, that parents know how to get help, either helping their child or reaching back. So really opening up those lines of communication intentionally, really.
So I have a first grader and a third grader, and question I have is how, if you could summarize maybe a couple things that are different about this curriculum than the previous curriculum or the current curriculum, just for my awareness of
I mean,
so there's 2 kind of components. We have this number corner, which is what we change out of radius. So it's about 5 to 20 minutes of the day is this number corner. So that's kind of just looking at some different one of the things that I love with our old curriculum, you taught it. So in like fractions was taught in first grade on one day, and if you missed it, you were out of luck. Like it was a 1-day lesson in fractions, and you're out of luck because you weren't there that day. So obviously we have to catch them up and so on. Where this, it's cycling, so it's constantly coming up, and so we're building on it and building on it as the year goes on. So there's that number corner part, but then there's also the math lesson, and then this workplaces. What that really is, what our kids know it is games. So we have workplaces and games where they're up to they're workplaces. So that is kind of the lesson part. But the biggest difference is we were pretty glued to our math journal before. So there was a lot of rote, here's the strategy, here's how you solve it, here's where the ones are, here's where the 10s go, solve it, okay, now you're gonna do some problems. I just remember in 2nd grade, there's one lesson where it was 4 pages of story problems, and it was just painful. So it was a lot more rote, a lot more in a math journal, so to speak. There was some, it wasn't as bad as when we were in school, but this is just so hands-on. I mean, they're playing games, not even realizing, today it was me versus them, and you're doing a money game, and we're playing, and I'm rolling, and they're having their turn, and I'm hiding my eyes so I don't see what number they have, and they're so into it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would go on the same, at least in first grade, the number corner, what we're seeing is that it introduces a lot of concepts that might be taught the next month. So what we taught in December is now coming up in the curriculum piece, now in January and February. And in fact, we just had, at Forest Grove, I just had our 2nd grade teachers came and observed number corner today, just to get eyes on it. And after the lesson, we had time to kind of talk about questions, and I was able to chat with them, and they said that what I'm introducing in first grade number corner in February is actually right now an end of the year 2nd grade piece that they teach, and they were blown away by what my first graders were answering. So again, I'm not saying that this curriculum is the answer to everything, but it's this spiral to where I'm introducing it, I'm not expecting mastery for my first graders, but they're getting eyes on it, so when they do get to Holly in second grade, they're gonna say, oh hey, we saw this in first grade, and it just kind of comes a little bit more organically.
We know there'll be those growing pains, right? Like the kids in fourth grade next year who haven't had it the previous year. So it's gonna take time for, you know, these kiddos who've had it in K1 to get up to upper L. I mean, second graders are starting it and they like already forget all the old, I'm starting to forget some of the old stuff. If you've been around, you know, math mountains and all that, and like math mountains are starting to leave my vocabulary.
So, and you said there were 30 teachers that piloted, so would you say the vast majority of them were supportive?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
And is there a plan in place to, a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years, whatever, to sort of evaluate the success of the program so that if there are decisions looking to be made potentially at the middle school level, we're leveraging what we're gathering here to make those decisions?
Absolutely, and that's always and forever, right? And so I think that some of that really lives and breathes within our district improvement and our school improvement process, where we're continually looking at our student achievement data and what the impacts are on that student achievement data directly related to curriculum review process and a new updated curriculum. So yes, always and forever.
Okay. And then last question, in terms of teacher prep time, right, this is a change. You know, what is it sounds like the folks that piloted it are very enthusiastic about it. I think that's great. That's why we do these things. What's the rest of the teacher tone, if you will, in terms of a change like this, and if you don't mind sharing how that was?
People are excited about something new. I think they're kind of burnt out. You know, obviously we can't say how everybody is feeling.
Right.
But I think overall, I think people are excited for something new.
If there's a prep time and ramp up time to get familiar with it, there's plenty of time for us to.
I mean, that's what we're going for, right? I mean, right now, the math committee is really diving into all of those specifics around professional learning. In fact, some feedback from an early release day in December was that they wanted to see it. They wanted to like see Bridges in action, and they wanted to get their hands on a lesson and all of that. And so in March, all of our math committee leaders are going to be hosting their grade level. So for example, Holly will have second grade, all the second grade teachers in her classroom, she'll model a number corner. They'll kind of get a hands-on the lesson. So we're starting to scaffold already in anticipation of your approval. But we will also be then looking to May and then June and some options moving forward and laying out that professional development in order to support them throughout the entire year and really years to come. I mean, it's someone mentioned that earlier. It's not a one and done, good luck, but it's that ongoing professional learning that I really truly believe makes a difference when we're rolling out something new.
Any other questions for Amy and the team?
I'll just comment quickly. The thoroughness, thoughtfulness, rigor, and energy that went behind this in my time on the board is we've not done to this level. It's not to disparage anything that was done previously. This is setting the bar again at a higher level in terms of how we evaluate and implement curriculum. So thank you for the work that you've done. And I look forward to, I love the Italian to soar, and I love the idea of, cascading this up to the 6th, 12, or 8, 12 level. So really nice work. Really nice work.
Amy, Dr. Granger for the
So real quick, thank you to the work that you all did. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of anxiety for some of your colleagues too, because change is never easy. But I appreciate the work that was put in, looking forward to the outcomes, looking forward to professional development opportunities, as Mr. DeWitt had mentioned, as we progress into next year, and for hearing your colleagues that may have a lot of questions as we get into the school year, what that looks like. You got a chance to kind of put your toes in the water, and they're still wondering what the temperature is. So, but looking forward to it. As a former math teacher, I just think this is awesome. So well done. Thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you very much.
I was going to ask a question, but we're going long enough on it.
Okay. Next up, we have our AP Physics textbook purchase recommendation.
So the next one is a little bit more standard, what you typically see come before you. Mr. Olson is here this evening to answer any questions that you might have, but this is a request for approval of a AP Physics course, or excuse me, textbook for a high school, specifically targeted at 11th and 12th grade students. Really the why behind it is that the AP Physics College Board curriculum is changing. And so this textbook will further align with those updates to that AP Physics curriculum, starting in the 24-25 school year. Those are the big high level. What would you add to that?
I would just add the last time we had a new AP Physics textbook was 9 years after I left Hudsonville as a student, so 2005. And the AP board, or the college board, recommends that every 10 years you update your textbook curriculum. They strongly recommend that. So this is going on 20 years, which is double the time, obviously. And so many of the textbooks are falling apart. The new textbook also has a lot of upgraded technological needs, so students can also use their Chromebooks and interact with that on a deeper level. So hopefully it's important to you, and it's important to Mr. Vanderlady.
What would you say, if you know, the core additions or changes beside the interactive piece? I mean, I'm not a science person, so if you say this changed or this changed, but can you give me a?
I can't give you specifics on like, here's how the curriculum is changing within the College Board expectations. Certainly.
I think you're seeing a textbook that's been updated, like anything else, from graphics to charts, maps, interaction, keep the kids involved a little bit longer with AP work.
I did know considerable kind of expansion within the technology, the integration of technology, which we know now that our students are one-to-one, that becomes a critical component for student engagement and demonstration of learning, those types of pieces, but I can't speak to like the specific curriculum content that the college board is changing.
I can tell you, I'm in his class quite often, and just he does add a lot of technological pieces, but it's on his own, finding things, and so this would just, work to aid him in those resources and furthering your students' knowledge.
Yeah, the teacher resources are substantially different than they were a while ago.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Is it true that's the same author? I read here that he's already very familiar with the author, and apparently he's using the second edition of the same textbook, so it's probably a refresh.
Content's the same.
Yes.
All right, any other questions on the AP Physics? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. So both of those recommendations will come to the board then at our next regular meeting.
Good, we look forward to that. All right, next up we have our Diversity and Advocacy Committee update.
I'm going to give a quick update. Mandy is not able to be here this evening, but I'm going to give a quick update regarding where we are with our diversity and advocacy. As you know, the first document that's going around was sent to the board, and we discussed this about a year and probably 18 months ago, a year and a half ago. It had a timeline and the purpose and the process we were looking to follow in our first year of doing this work. Well, trying to stay true to form, we wanted to make sure we did our due diligence with this work. So it took a little bit longer than expected. You can see our communication for a recommendation was suggested to go to the board by the spring of 2023, which has passed. We are now to the spring, almost to the spring of 2024. So the second sheet that I passed out really has the timeline for the next 4 cycles of our meetings, really 5 because there's 2 in May. We have had our February meeting already, which was phase 3 of the work. Phase 3 of the work really gets into looking at our potential solutions of how to address our problem of practice, and then as well as going through, and then next month getting to phase 4, which is really starting to work with the communication and really doing our chart regarding how do we evaluate. So here's the document. I'm passing this around now that has the document for phase 3, which the team is going through, the committee is going through right now. And then following that potential solutions, get to phase 4, which I'm now passing around. Sorry about that. Which then has us to evaluate where we are with what programs. I can tell you we've looked at several different programs and solutions. Some are K-12, some are K-5, some are K-8, some are 6-12. There is no magic wand for this conversation, but I do know that we want to have conversations with this committee and have a strong recommendation that we could bring to the board to make sure it meets the needs of our community and our kids, our staff, and our students. Not just those that are maybe in our school, but are going through our school. So I just wanted to give you that quick update. Again, there's nothing that we'll bring to the board for recommendation. Our goal is to bring a recommendation to the board by the end of May. If that works, if there needs to be more time, then we'll take more time. We want to do this right, make sure the communication and the work goes through the board as we do this. So one of the conversations was, are we getting to the point of sharing what are our solutions? And I think we have such a wide range right now, we want to narrow that down before we say, okay, here are the solutions that we have. So hopefully next month, if not in April, we need to move it back to May and June, and we'll go from there. But I want to just give the board a quick update on the timeline of where we were. As you could see from our first initial timeline, it was trying to get it done by the end of the school year in 2023. We're winding down 2024, and we do think this is, it's a heavy lift, but it's also important to our kids and our community. So we're working through this. Obviously, it's part of our strategic plan, whether it was in SOAR 4, it's now part of SOAR 5, so we'll continue this work. I do want to thank Mandy for her leadership. I want to thank Amy, who also served on the committee with several parents, several administrators, teachers. It's a good group. That's not all sees eye to eye on everything, but that's part of the task, is to work through some of those questions, concerns going from there. And that's kind of where we are. What questions might you have?
Just want to thank the people on the committee for their patience. When you're putting in that work and it's volunteer time, and you really care about something, it's hard to see a delay, I would imagine. But thankful that everyone recognizes how important it is, but also that we want to get this right for this moment in time. And so thank them for their patience, and we'll continue to plug through.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I'd rather go slow and try to get it right than try to push something through. It's really important. So.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I think that pushing, people want to see some action. We saw that loud and clear in our survey results. That doesn't mean to do it wrong, to say we crossed the T and dotted the I, and it was the wrong letters we were crossing. But we want to make sure we do it right. But we also need to move.
Issues aren't going away.
No, they're not. They're truly not. Some were addressed tonight, and it's real.
The dialogue is as important as
It is.
the outcomes.
It is.
Do you anticipate the outcome of this potentially being a recommendation for some sort of curriculum?
Could be.
Or some sort of...
It could be a lesson that the teachers teach as one of their electives. It could be something that's incorporated into health class. Could be a program that other districts are using. We're really looking at multiple different options. I think there's no, if there was one thing that could address this in our country, it would have been done.
Sure.
And every grade level is different. Every relationship with a teacher and a staff member is different at different grade levels. And our kids respond differently at different grade levels also.
Sure. I don't mean to put you on the spot here,
Yeah.
but do you think that us not having something in place right now is making us vulnerable if something were to happen in terms of a racial situation
Sure.
or some other form of discrimination?
So I
You
would
can
just,
answer if you don't want, but
I will say this. One of the very first conversations we had regarding this had to deal with a situation that took place off campus.
Sure.
And it was dealt with. Our response was we wanted to do some of this work before we had to do some of this work.
Perfect.
This is a group of people that if a situation does happen, I feel like we can get this group together and say, okay, this might change the playing field. You see situations, I know of one that happened at a local district 2 weeks ago at a sporting event. That changed what they had to do, and it changed it overnight. We saw that happen a little over a year ago at a district nearby.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers the question, but the idea was if we can do this work, which is delicate and might take time the right way, then we aren't forced to do something quickly overnight.
Makes sense. And that's, the reason I ask is to get to the point of the pace, right? It's important to get this right, but it's also important to make sure that we're moving forward in a way that we need to.
Right. You can ask some kids and they'll say, it's too late already. You can also ask some people that say, you're going too fast. So we're trying to balance that to do what's best for us.
Thank you.
And it could, the pace could change. If something happens, the pace will change.
So, Dr. Danger, in the meantime, as we're developing a plan, if we know that a student is being harassed or bullied by another student,
Sure.
is that being addressed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Those are always addressed. I think if you ask our administrators, we just lost Mr. Olson, and I got to put him on the spot. He went back to conferences probably, or went wherever he had to go. But if you ask our administrators, you get to a point of, at some point, all we're doing is reacting, as opposed to teaching our kids how to do the right thing before we have to discipline them for doing what I would say the wrong thing. So I don't know of a single situation that's not addressed. I also can tell you that we can't provide that information to everybody all the time. So when two kids have a situation, I can't go tell the parent, here's how this other kid was disciplined. It's not legal. So we're challenged with that. There's an article that's coming in the next SOAR that outlines the 7 factors. We've talked about it as a board. You've talked about it as a board. So I think the answer is we're always addressing them, but at some point, we'd like to give our kids ways to not have to be addressed. We're reactive, that's all we're doing right now.
I think when we look at our mission statement in educating kids to be fully functioning, citizens of a global society, if you look at other universities, if you look at businesses across the country, these are things that are being done, right, in this arena. So I think it's important for us to do it here too.
I also think that the arena is changing over the last couple of years. And there's some things that were going on a couple of years ago that people are starting to back off of. And so I think I commend you for taking it slowly, but I think there's things going on that are very troubling to me, that are going on pretty close to where we live. And I want to make sure that all groups are protected, parents as well as students, and that's going to be a very big part of the conversation.
Any other questions?
If you can just please express continued support. With the work, I agree, David, the work is good, it's important, and that it's critical to what we do. So.
All right, moving on. Maintenance mower purchase recommendation. I'm assuming Mr. Briggs, you're taking this one.
Thank you, yes. So the recommendation is reviewed at the top. We wrote this up in the standard form. We're going to talk about this tonight. Talk about the recommendation, but we'll talk about in a little deeper dive than we do in the board meeting. But we are going to ask for one of these new Ventrac mowers. It's new to me. Our grounds department researched it and caused me to have to do some research with it. It's a pretty innovative piece of equipment. It has, and I'm skipping a bunch of my standard purchasing stuff that you've heard way too many times. So, but the nice thing about this system they researched is its versatility. And we have, especially with the addition of the 5-6 campus, Dr. Vanderjack, Amy, myself, and several other administrators sat through a lot of meetings where we had to deal with cutting through wetlands and addressing some hills, addressing just different pitches. And the end solution of that was a lot of angled and steep slopes around roads and everything like that. This system cuts those a lot better. Right now, where we cut around a lot of our steeper slopes, you see it all the time where you have that, I call it the downhill wheel, digs in, and this system just better distributes the weight. The main mower deck on this system is front. It's a front mount, so it distributes the weight better. It doesn't push as much weight over the wheels. So it just gives them a lot more, not only gives them safety, because we're gonna purchase duals for it, but it's just a better system. And then with a new phenomena for me, and I say that pretty interesting, I think you learned, I grew up on a farm, thought you knew everything about dirt, but blue clay is this amazing substance. I didn't know anything about it. Dad had clay at his farm, but it was a different clay. So this blue clay, when it's wet, and you press into it, it just doesn't rebound the way other soils do. So this will, because the weight's distributed better, we'll be able to get on some wet fields and do some things that before we just had to stay off, or we'd tear them up. So I've got the standard. The staff did a really great job. I want to thank Lee for his work and leadership. Rob Sheppers out at the Baldwin Street Athletics Campus is just so committed to doing things right out there. You can tell by the way that athletic complex is just really spotless. It's top notch. But he's a leader out there. And so we compared a Ventrac to a John Deere, which was the closest comparison. And the dealer, the same Spartan dealer, gave us the quote for Toro as well as the Ventrac. And the Toro just is like it's still got a. They just weren't interested because they knew the Ventrac was really more applicable for us. So their quote still has a cab and a snowblower and a lot of other attachments on it. But the closest apples to apples is the John Deere. So yeah, this is going to be our recommendation. In the past, there's a little paragraph in the middle. We used to get amazing GSA or MI deal pricing, and it's just not. It's not a thing right now. I mean, they can sell everything they make many times over. So that, yeah, that sums up the presentation. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Briggs?
It's not a replacement, right? It's an addition.
Actually is a replacement.
It is a replacement? Is that in there? Am I just missing something?
It is, but I should have covered that. Excuse me. About the fourth line down in the background paragraph, it's replacing a 20-year-old John Deere mower. Some people said it was 30 years old, so I said it's at least 20 years old.
So do you sell that John Deere?
We'll still use it. We'll still use it because it really doesn't. I mean, we can't. The hardest thing right now is getting parts for it. We'll use as much as we can until it dies. Yeah, then we'll just scrap it.
Any other questions for Mr. Briggs?
Are you anticipating any other attachments or?
Yes, very much so. Yes. So with the addition of the new cross-country course that we're developing up in Bar Road, there's actually, this is what we're buying to get apples to apples with John Deere is the 68-inch tough cut, which is more of a rough cut, but there's a 95-inch finish cut. It's really sharp. It's what they use in a lot of nice, big league ballparks. Yeah. Thank you.
Speaking of that, just to diverge for one moment, speaking of that clay, I remember a conversation, it was months and months and months ago, about the cross-country, thank you, and the clay issue there. No, we don't have to dig into detail on that now. Is that still a thing we're dealing with?
We're getting there.
It's really, it's actually is made because we're essentially developing a rustic trail because we don't have irrigation. We've had some favorable, I believe last June we got some good rain. So we had some pretty good germination, and our good grasses, the grasses we're trying to add, they won some victories last year against the big blade, basically quackgrass. So that was in the farmer's field for, it's basically a grass hayfield. So we made a lot of progress last year that we didn't think we were going to make. Another vendor came in and did pretty extensive aeration for us. It's a vendor out of Zealand. The name's escaping me, but they did amazing work for us. So there actually was a little bit of use of it last fall. It's coming.
It's a journey. It's like
Yes.
It's definitely not an overnight thing.
All right, any additional questions for Mr. Briggs? Hearing none, we will see this in March. All right, next up, I'm assuming this is yours as well, Mr. Briggs, the technology E-rate purchase.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So next up of the items to review, we're going to recommend purchase of 8 new Cisco network switches along with, and this is basically, some of these are additional, but 96 7-year licenses for management and tech support from Sentinel Technologies of Downers Grove, Illinois for $157,722. If it's approved, this will be funded by the 2019 bond, and then we strongly anticipate, because it's already been approved through the E-rate program, that we would get a 50% reimbursement from that federal program. If you don't remember, that's service fee that's on your on a lot of your phone bills. Yeah, so the reason we need 8 new switches, one of the larger reasons is we're just incorporating a lot of new technology into our buildings that wasn't there in the past. We've got some really innovative things in the clocks, messaging, and PAs in the classrooms. It's a huge safety factor. We can actually push a message in there if we want to, and we can communicate in the classrooms in a way that we've never been able to before. There's also an IP speaker that's needed in a lot of the classrooms to replace the old wired PA speaker that just, that we all know what that used to sound like when we were in school. But this has a lot better sound quality, and just gives us, those clocks and speakers give us amazing, I would say, not only a practical communication day by day to the classroom from the office, but it's for safety, it's top notch. Just gives us really great communication. So we need the additional switches to handle that capacity. And Cisco basically changed their licensing. So that's caused us to need to get 96 new licenses for our other 88 switches that we already have. Sorry, I couldn't do that math. So yeah. So a total of with the switches are 58,000 and the licenses are 99,000. For that brings you up to the total of just under $158,000.
But Pat will get 50% of that back based on the reimbursement, or is that?
Yes, yes.
It's about 79,000 then.
Correct. And the way we handle that, Barb, is we credit that back to the bond fund. So it extends our ability to purchase bond items.
Is there a deadline for when we can utilize the rest of 2019 bond money?
There is. The tax guidelines would want us to spend what we voted in 19, and then we sold in, that first sale was completed in March of 20. So they want those funds to be done in 7 years. There's a percentage, there's a whole lot of other math in there too.
And there's a difference between construction versus technology, and there's some variables in there.
Right, okay, but somewhere in that neighborhood. So we have some, I'm just thinking it's been great to be able to rely on those funds. I don't remember exactly what's left. But then if we're getting some money back through a grant, it's, as long as we're not losing our options, that's great.
Yeah, between, we call them pay apps, but every month we get a pay app from the, not these equipment or technology for the, I call the brick and mortar contractors. And it's between $2.5 and $3 million. And we just moved past spending that first one, the bonds that we sold in 20. Then we did another series in 23. So we're
in the majority of them were sold in 20.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. So we're in good shape there.
Great, thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions for Mr. Briggs?
So these can use it like all schools that have this upgraded network? thing,
Yeah,
for lack of a better term.
Yes. So the schools that we've added the clocks already to.
Yeah.
I mean, we put them in Forest Grove.
Okay.
Our next big group that we're going to put in is actually in the high school.
Okay.
And that's probably the most critical spot to have them. The high school's so big, we just wanted to take on, bite off a smaller chunk before we took that on. But
We
that's,
wanted to try
that's the
Forest
next thing.
Grove first to make sure.
Yeah.
And they were okay with that because their clocks didn't work. So it worked out well. And the high school's on 3 systems right now. So you've got the old, I would say the old 1012, and you've got the freshman campus. Now they're connected. So the middle section has the new clocks. So one thing to get them on one system. It works, but it's all patched. And it needs to be upgraded.
It seems
The goal,
like a safety no-brainer too.
yeah, the goal is long-term to have the whole district done so that notifications can be done anywhere to notify of something taking place in a classroom, in a building, exterior and interior.
Any more questions? All right, we're gonna move on to trip requests.
Sure, we have 2 trip requests. One is the trip request that we've had, well, most of you have had every year for the last several years, the water polo girls team going to Lincolnshire to compete in the tournament. They've been going there for years. And that's the same idea. They leave on a Friday. They have a couple games Friday night, Saturday. Then they come home. It's one of the strongest tournaments in the Midwest. I went there years when I was coaching. And then the second request is for Rochelle Goosen to take a group of students to Europe, which is a standard EF tour. If you've ever heard about EF tours, I've been on a few of them myself. It's a great opportunity for kids to really see what it's like, what Europe is like, what true history is like outside of our young country.
Do you have to, side note, sort of related, sort of not, is this part of a class? Or
So
can anybody
traditionally,
sign up?
when you do these, it's anybody can sign up,
Okay.
but for the most part, you have kids that have been in your class, so you know the families, you know the kids, you know, it's no different than any kind of extended exterior trip. You want to know the kids that you're taking. When we did it, when I used to run these trips, it was swimmers that used to go, because you know the families, you know the kids, you know the character, and what they're going to be like on a trip. You don't want to take just anybody to a foreign country without their parent.
Andrew, does that conflict with your science?
No. I'm just curious, because it sounds great.
He wants to go.
It's a lot more expensive, but it's pretty cool. Just thinking for the future. Pat, do we have those new vans yet? Can
It
we
is
say
not,
those?
they are not taking a van. So
No,
there's-
obviously. Come on, I'm talking about the polo. Water polo.
Maybe talking about the
Yes,
Swiss
we do.
Army knife bus.
Yeah, are they taking us for the water polo thing? Will they do
They
that?
might, it depends on what they can spare.
It's in, like, it's rolling off the line.
Cool.
They told Rob so many times, it's so close.
Well, maybe it'll be our.
But in the Europe trip, they did put vans, and they are not taking vans, but that's the only option they had. So they're driving themselves to the airport.
I get it.
And I don't mean to be sorry, but just if you saw there, it did say they're taking vans. They're not taking vans. Yeah. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our Board of Conduct review. We're reviewing number 11 through 14. We're finishing our conduct tonight.
Yep, got it.
All right, we'll start with number 11. I will provide support for the superintendent and employees of the school district and ensure they are able to perform their responsibilities in a professional manner. If concerns arise, I will direct concerns to the superintendent. Comments, feedback?
I just had a question, just historical on this one, because it kind of, I feel like it goes without saying, it's part of our job as a Board of Education, but was there any, I know some of these you've mentioned in the past were brought because of specific instances, but is there anything more to this one than meets the eye? It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Not to my recollection when it was put in place. I mean, the process for developing this was to benchmark a couple of other school code of conduct documents that at that time Nick Sigler had referenced. And then through review and discussion around some of those. So I do not recall, Mark, I don't recall anything. It mirrors what we've always talked about, either, and maybe at times more firmly, I think it's more firm now, but less firmly in the past perhaps, about the superintendent is the primary conduit if there are concerns. So that, if I recall at the time, it was, firm that up and formalize it, and that matches our policy, and that's how we are to operate. So.
Makes sense, thanks.
I do think we have some room for improvement. I think we're doing better than maybe a couple years ago. And this is where the trust factor comes in. There have been some comments made by a board member or two during public meetings that have specifically stated that they don't trust either the central office or the superintendent. And that concerns me. I think the part that I am looking most closely at when I read this is I will direct concerns to the superintendent. From a historical perspective, and Ken and Mark probably could speak to this, in our effort to be transparent and accountable, I think sometimes we are also over discussing things that probably could have been dealt with between a board member and the superintendent to clear up a misunderstanding, and so that there's not even a email put out there about some question. And again, I think the pendulum has definitely swung way to the side. I guess I want to suggest that if there's something that you don't necessarily understand from the central office or from Dr. Vanderjack, think about whether or not it's something through a phone call could maybe be cleared up before there's an email that goes out to Doug, copy the whole board on something that's relatively nominal. That's more about communication than it is about an issue that we all need to be aware of. So that's an area that I think we do need to maybe take a small step back and think about whether it really is a whole board email conversation or whether it's a clarification that could be done directly to the superintendent.
One of the comments that was made in the Open Meetings Act, I think Mark and Andrew attended, was the use of just be cautious of how many emails go to everybody, because if there are things that are discussed in an email that could ever come to the board as part of a vote on something, it could be potentially a violation of the Open Meetings Act if it started as a group conversation per se. So maybe to your point, that has something, there's some merit. There's also times that communication is needed for the whole board to know kind of where we are. But.
Yeah, I think your comments are fair. I mean, I know I have been a strong proponent, as everybody I think realizes, of everything goes to every board member. And because of transparency concerns that we were struggling with before, probably less so now to your point, that not everything does need to go to every board member. And having that thoughtfulness of, okay, I've got a question on such and such, and I'm just going to reach out to Dr. Vanderjack. I mean, I think the overarching principle here is that you still work with the superintendent versus through a staff member or committee chair or something like that. I think that's overarching, but I think that not every question, I'm trying to think of one, I'm not coming up with a good one, but what's the situation with buying this mower?
Well, I think
that kind of stuff doesn't need necessarily go to everybody.
Yeah. Greg, there was a potential grant opportunity, and Greg just sent me an email. Hey, have you seen this out there?
That's a good example.
So he just sent it to me, and he might have copied Barb. I don't know, but he sent it to me, and I got back to him and said we looked into it, and I think that was a pretty good example.
That's a good example.
I think Dawn, one of the things you just brought up is that does everybody have to know everything? And I left our meeting.
No, not that everybody has to know everything, but does everybody need to be involved in every conversation if there's just a need for clarification?
Okay, so, because we had a meeting a couple of months ago here when we were talking about this, I think Barb and Mark had put together some data. And someone was offended because they weren't, it was sprung on them at the last minute. And at that point, I said, okay, if that's how we want to do things in the future, I'll be copying more people on just about everything. I do agree with what Ken said about the fact that, you know, if it can be taken care of with a couple of people, we don't have to tell everybody, we don't have to talk to everybody about it. And so that's where I'm a little bit confused then sometimes, but in general, I mean.
So let me clarify then,
Yes.
I'm not talking about communication among the board members, I'm talking about questions that you might have for Doug. Or if he sends out an email, and then you're like, gosh, I really don't understand that, or I kind of wish it was done a little bit differently, rather than, Doug, I didn't really like the way this was, and then you copy all the board members. I would rather see you say, hey, Doug, I didn't really understand what you meant here, and maybe I misunderstood it, could you clarify it for me? And to me, and what we had been done in the past, is then Doug would say, you know what, good point, I bet your other board members need to know that too. And then he would say, hey, you know, great, contact me, but if it's just a misunderstanding or clarification, again, not that I don't like to read emails from everybody, but I think to Doug's point about the OMA, and about the fact that it can be, seem somewhat petty sometimes. I think we just need to think twice before we do a whole group discussion about something that's maybe not as big of an issue as we might misunderstand.
Yeah, I thank you for clarifying that, because I was thinking of that meeting several months ago, so thanks for clarifying. And yeah, we'll all give each other a little grace, because I'll probably be the first one to send an email to the whole group that maybe should have gone to Doug. So thanks for clarifying.
Once you get to the third or fourth response, it's time to pick up the phone. I mean,
Back in the day, there was like 10, and I just stopped.
Yeah, it is. It's time to
Fit
pick up
this
the
one out.
phone and say, hey, am I making myself clear?
And sometimes the first.
Yeah.
I think-
Yeah, excellent.
I think in general, we don't do that many emails anymore. Overall. All right, any other questions on the 11? Number 12, I will promote the development of policies that ensure effective management of the district.
I do want to go back up to 11, just one more point. This second statement.
Yeah.
If concerns arise, I will direct concerns to the superintendent. Does anyone on the board feel that there's any ambiguity around that we need to talk about, that we need to clarify, that we need to understand amongst each other? So is that pretty clear and simple?
I guess that was kind of where I was getting to, if there was like a specific scenario that had come up that pertained to that. Because yeah, it's pretty broad, but again, he's the CEO, so I kind of like that's.
Yeah. Well, I have seen emails go back and forth between certain people who have certain board members who have attended a committee, and an email that goes out to the committee chair or to somebody versus going to the superintendent. And it would seem that those communications, those emails that reach out would be to the superintendent first, so that he can understand the issue and dig into it, and then follow up as appropriate. So I think there have been instances of that in the past, and I don't want to belabor that and dig into it, but I think that that's just something that's important that we're all aligned on. And if we are, then great, then we can move on. But
Yeah, just so and I think it's like a leadership style too. I think totally makes sense to me. But in that particular instance, just say Dr. Vanderjack wasn't at that committee meeting for whatever reason, but whoever was leading it was there, would have the context. Are we suggesting that always just send it to Dr. Vanderjack first, and he will then send it along to whoever?
well, that's part of the reason I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
I think we should explore that and talk about that and get aligned on that.
I think I know what you're referencing. I didn't send the email, I wasn't involved in that, but I always believe in taking the email to the right person. Why? I mean, if that person has the answer, if there's an issue with that person, I'm gonna go there. If I have to send everything to Dr. Vanderjack, to me, that's micromanaging, or him micromanaging. I just, if I have a question, let's say if I had a bond question, to me, Pat Briggs is the expert on the bond. I would email Pat. To me, you're our bond expert.
It depends on the question about the bond. I think if it's about construction, it's about bond financing. I think there's been some that will email, a committee might email Amy or Ann or Pat, and I've been copied on it. That's fine. It's nice to know if you have a question about the bond and you're talking with Pat, from my standpoint, it's nice to know. That way, if we ever have the conversation, I mean, our teams keeps me up to date anyway, but it'd be nice to know. I think this is probably referring more and more to something that you hear takes place in a building or a teacher, or I heard this. And I've gotten calls from almost all of you, hey, I don't know if you heard this, but I'm hearing this. It's like, yep, here's what we're doing, or I didn't know. And that's something we have to look into, so.
I think the key here too is concerns, right? If
Exactly.
concerns arise, if
Different
it's,
than information.
if it's, hey, what's the date of something, right? Like that's different than, the question is different than a concern, I think.
Perfect, yeah, and so it's nice to hear from you, Doug, too, that like, hey, CC, and I think that would be an assumption anyway, that we're gonna send something.
Yeah, if you want to know the date of graduation and you reach out to Robin, I am not going to be offended.
I'm going straight to you, that's how I read it.
So,
Very little one person.
but you know what I mean, if there are concerns about something, then
Yeah, we'll just make sure to CC, appreciate it.
Are we good with you, Robert? All right, moving on to 12. I will promote the development of policies that ensure effective management of the district.
I'll just comment to start the ball rolling here, that I think that we rely a lot on Dr. Vanderjack and the staff, Robin and others, to make sure our policies are up to date, are best practice for the knowledge that we have, that they're thorough and thoughtful and followed, and I think we're actually in a pretty good spot because of the work that's done. That again, our policies were up to date, accurate, thorough, followed, communicated. We're ahead of the game in most cases. Occasionally, we're catching up a little bit, but I think in general, and I think this has matured over time, and I think we're at the best we've been in my 20 years on the board. It may feel differently, but we're at the best we've been in terms of policy management and effectiveness. So I think that's off to the team for the great work you do.
I would agree with you, Ken, because I think we're way ahead of the goal of a lot of districts right now, of all the changes that are being made. Yeah.
This is my short time on the board. I feel like this is probably one of our strongest suits, just as a district. I always think there's a high level of confidence, but always having updates to policies. So that's not a lot that we're doing. It's all the hard work of the central office doing that.
I was gonna say, it's more of it's thanks, I think, to Doug and his team. I don't think we've developed our own policy.
No.
but yeah, you'll get your chance if we change companies to do a heavy lift on policy. No,
All right, moving on to 13. I will render all decisions based on the available facts and my independent judgment and avoid undue or prejudicial influence of outside groups.
I sent an email around, again, I apologize if there wasn't a hyperlink, but this is one of the code of conducts that I think has bothered me probably the most in the last few years, that I feel like it's been violated at worst or ignored at best. This is a nonpartisan position. When you look at the ballot, this is in the nonpartisan section. And I think because of where our world is and where some of the people in the community are, we've stretched, in my opinion, what's acceptable when it comes to undue or prejudicial influence. If you have a formal political action committee that's registered with the county, that then spends time searching out meetings and conversations with board members, representing this political action committee. I feel that's a very poor example to set. And I recognize when someone's coming onto the board new, obviously they're running for a position. But for a sitting board member to make themselves available and maybe sometimes carry water for a political action group, I have a big problem with that. And I purposely am not naming names or making comments. You can see for yourself what I'm referencing. But I would encourage everyone to consider that moving forward. Perceptions are real. People observe conversations and side meetings. And so when we talk about how we conduct ourselves at a meeting, that we seem to be getting along and no one's shouting at each other, and for the most part, that's true. But when you want to know why it is that some people question your integrity or question whether or not you're adhering to something that you signed, I think this would be a glaring example of that situation.
Is this illegal
Is what illegal?
to contribute to this?
I didn't say it was illegal to
Is
contribute.
it unethical?
What I did say, Greg, is that it is a violation, in my opinion, of a code of conduct that board members sign.
Okay, what is it, what exactly does it violate?
Read 13.
Okay, I'll read it out loud.
Okay.
I will render all decisions based on the available facts and my independent judgment and avoid undue or prejudicial influence of outside groups. So how does,
And maybe because I'm from a legal background, the word undue and prejudicial are very strong words in the legal field.
that was the first question I asked, is this legal? And you said no.
I guess I'm not understanding what question you're asking. Is it legal to what? To form a committee?
No, to contribute to it.
Of course it's not. This is America, right?
Okay.
But I'm saying as a sitting board member, if you want to know why you're perceived as not being supportive of what's happening in the schools, and if you want to be perceived as not being influenced by a group that was formed as a political action committee when we're supposed to have nonpartisan standings on this board, that is, in my opinion, an ethical and a moral problem.
So repeat what you said right at the end about a political.
When you are elected as a board member, it's on the nonpartisan section of the ballot. Being supported and influenced by a political action committee formed for a particular purpose, even though it may not be a official party, I think we can all see through that. We see that on a nationwide standpoint. Political action committees are created to center around a particular issue or a particular party. And I am not saying that this meets that exact criteria, but I know there have been comments about why do people think we're not trustworthy? Why do people not like us? Why are people arguing about what they see? This is an example, and I have heard this from numerous people. And you can decide to do whatever you want, but if you are truly asking why we have some of the issues we have, and why people perceive certain board members as not being true to the district, but are being influenced by outside groups, this is what is pointed to.
So I'm just going to speak on my own behalf. I'm not influenced by anyone. I do my research, and I do a ton of research done. And you should know that, because whenever I have voted, I have specifically stated why I have voted the way that I have and the research that I've done. Now, people might not like how I vote, and I respect that. But if you don't agree with how I vote, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person or that I don't support the district, because that's not true. That's not true at all.
And I'm not saying that that's my position. But what I am saying is that is the public persona that you are helping to perpetuate. And again, this is a code of conduct that we have decided years ago that this was important to us. We can fine tune words and we can talk about whether it's legal, ethical, or moral. My responsibility here is to point out what I am seeing. And you can take it for what it's worth. But to me, if we're going to be transparent, then it needs to be transparent about who we are either receiving funds from, who's helping to promote us, and who we have conversations with on a weekly or monthly basis. And what are those conversations about? I don't know what those conversations are about, but people see who is the go-to person for a particular PAC.
So you are assuming that board members have conversations, and that's an incorrect assumption to make. It is.
Do you stick around after the meetings?
Mark's meeting with the guy in
Not all the time.
Arrows.
Not all the time.
I think you're taking this more personally, Barb, than I intend for you to take. But there are clearly people who, if you want to know why they don't think you're supportive of the district, why they don't trust you, this is one of the reasons why.
What do you tell them when they say that?
I tell them that I believe it's a violation of the
No,
code of conduct.
what do you say to them when they tell you that Barb is not,
If it's a person who I believe is violating this code of conduct, that's what I will say to the person who asks me how I feel about it. I will say, in my opinion, they are violating our board code of conduct. Is that code of conduct enforceable by law? Of course not. But do we have an ethical obligation to carry through what we have promised to do? I feel like I am.
my question wasn't though about the code of conduct. My question was if someone were to approach you and say to you, Barb doesn't support the district, what would you say to them?
I'm not sure that that elicits a response from me as much as saying, what are you referring to?
You ever defend her?
Without a specific instance that you're talking about in my way, no one has come to me
Okay.
and said that.
Okay.
I think that line of your question to me is really not getting to this point.
Well, I guess, when I see someone bring something like this, this was meant to cause derision towards somebody, to belittle somebody.
No, it was
Well,
intended.
that's what it's doing, though. That's
Well,
what it's
Ray,
doing.
it was intended to follow through with what we agreed to do, which was to go through the code of conduct and
Mhm.
talk about things and areas in which you think we can improve. And this is one where I believe we can improve.
I've got a question. Is there do you have thoughts on, do we need to reword 13? Like how would we, what is
I
the
think for the
potential
whole
resolution
code
to
of
it?
conduct, one of the things we may want to talk to MASB about next week is we come to an end result here and may tweak some of these, but how do we, as a board, decide we're going to enforce it?
Yeah, it's only as good as.
It is,
you're right.
but I think everyone here is a very moral, upstanding, ethical person overall.
100%.
And so if we're going to sign this, then I think we all need to say, hold me accountable.
Yeah, that's why I'm just wondering, is there a
You can
different way
shake
to
your head,
word
Mark,
it?
but this is a point of interest in the code of conduct that has been mentioned by the community that you wonder why they feel the way they do. And if we want to ignore this, that's at our own peril.
Yeah, perhaps another perspective is prior to the election, and so this has been a board with a history of, at least in my time on the board, there's an election, signs go up, a few bucks are spent on signs and so forth. And so prior to the last election, when I started seeing signs of 3 individuals and the signs are big and they're fancy and they're everywhere and so forth, it certainly struck me, right, wrong, good or bad, it struck me that there was a coordinated effort and coordinated funding behind that. And that is not wrong. That's not illegal. To me, it is not the spirit of board membership. And especially when when the individual is running, part of the objective is to remove a sitting board member, a current sitting board member, very good, with kids in the district, by the way. And so it struck me, and to Dawn's point, I suspect it struck others in the community, right, wrong, or bad, you can argue, but that there was a coordinated effort of funding and again, placing signs here and there and everywhere, big signs, little signs, and so forth, in order to, that had something behind it, that had some organization or something behind it.
Absolutely it did. And you know, Ken, I have to tell you that when I decided to run for the board, I ran to get elected. Okay? And I was very transparent about what I believed. You know, when I'm looking at 13 here and render all decisions and independent judgment and stuff, I am probably more rigid than any committee that could ever try to influence me. So if anyone influences me, they move me to the center. Okay, so and people make a choice. Okay, elections are about issues, and so there were plenty of other groups that supported other people and not myself. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think the HEA, when they made a decision as to vote, or I mean as to support someone, that's fine. That's America. That's what this is all about. Never once was there anything said about that. That's fine. They decided.
You don't need to justify that to me. All I'm reflecting, and we don't have to dig into it. All I'm reflecting is that I agree with Dawn that again, whether you agree with it or not, there could be a perspective of, wait a minute, we have never, in my 20 years, I've never seen multiple people running. I've never seen that level of effort to try and get folks on the board. Now, you can say that's just the way it is, Ken, and get used to it, and that's how things are going to run. That's fine. All I'm reflecting back is that there may be some, myself included, that there's a nugget of, wait a minute, what am I trusting here or not? And then on the heels of that, the conversations about the board officers and so forth by email. So that is a nugget of, do we trust or not? And again, you don't have to justify your position to me. It's to yourself. And that may just be the way it is. So, and what your position is, that's fine. I'm just echoing Dawn's comments that may lead to some of the perception of some within the community.
So I think it's helpful when you vote on something that you state why you're voting and can back it up. And I didn't want to bring it up, but I will bring it up now that you brought up about the elections. I don't know if I need to refresh Mark's memory, Dawn's memory, or Ken's memory, but I remember when I started on the board, before we elected officers, an email was sent to all board members as to who wanted to do what. And before the board meeting, we had a script, and everyone's name was already typed in, and who would get that officer, and who would nominate them, and who would do the second. In the following year, things were getting a little bit tighter. So we all sat in the back of the auditorium, and we determined Ken that he would be president. Do you remember that? We did that all before we even were at the meeting. So
If that happened, then that was wrong, and I'll take.
I guess it's duplicitous though, because, you know,
So if that happened, I'll admit that was wrong. I'll admit it.
And
So,
did it happen
again,
until the year we had a
doesn't-
change? Maybe it did. Right?
So again,
That's
it's a
exactly how
matter
it was
of, we're reviewing the code of conduct. We can all reflect on at the end of the day, I don't think there is any accountability or rules you can put about how, at the end of the day, it's just a matter where we all reflect. Oh, I can do better here, I can do better there, that's all.
I guess the disconcerting part about that to me was that after that vote, and then after someone, you know, got our texts and our emails and all that kind of stuff, Dawn, you made a statement to them, you know, talking about how it was not appropriate to do that type of a thing and that we shouldn't have talked to each other. And yet, the year before, what was done was much more blatant than that. And so it's one thing to know that you've done something that was similar to what we were being accused of, and yet sit there and talk down to the fact that this was done by someone else and how dare they do that. And you know, at that point, I wasn't gonna say something, but I said, you know what, I'm not gonna say a peep about this, okay, because just let it go. But the fact is that did happen. I've got all the, you know, the information, and so just, you know, don't say if it happened, say, yeah, that did happen, it shouldn't have happened, you know, but, I mean, we'd be idiots. We would be complete fools to show up at a meeting not asking people if they wanted to be the president or the vice president or the treasurer. What do you just walk into the meeting and for the first time say, well, let's see, I'm going to nominate Barb. I hope she wants it.
Well, Mark did that, and I told him don't ever do
Yes,
that again.
So we can continue down this path.
No,
Are we
the reason that we're
reviewing?
continuing down this path is because this was
Dr.
just
Hooper,
handed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get it, and I was wrong. Okay,
So-
okay.
One closing comment. And,
I don't remember this specifically, but okay, I was wrong.
2 days later at the media center, Don, I asked you to explain your comments about what 4 board members had violated the code of conduct and what had they done. And you said 3 times, you're just arrogant to me. You walked by at the same time, Ken. I said, could you explain to me? And you held your hand up like this and said, I'm not going to talk about it, and you walked away.
That's right.
So which one of these code of conducts are you talking about right now?
I was asking you your question.
So I think we're gonna regroup.
Thank you.
I think it's important whenever there's a vote that you can explain your vote and you can stand behind your vote. Not everyone is gonna agree with the vote, and that's okay. And as long as, I just think needs to be respect for board members and that you can justify why you voted the way that you voted. So, all right, moving on, number 14. I will refrain from posting personal opinions on board-related topics and issues. I will not post non-publicly available district-related information without the knowledge of the superintendent. This is the only one that is not on the policy. There's a board member
I can,
policy. This is the only one that's not on.
that's correct. This is one that was not in policy, that was added a few years ago because social media probably wasn't as prevalent. I think, and you can say what you want. I think the board has done, in my opinion, I've not had to respond to social media posts by board members that I would then have to respond to. But at some point, if there was a, in the past, I remember votes that didn't go the way, maybe it was a 4-3 or a 6-1, and there could be potential for posting decisions online. And this was more of a way to say, use social media for personal reasons and keep board conversations here. I think it's fun. I think it's been I've not had any issue, I've not heard anything about this last couple of years.
This is the only one not in policy, is that right?
Yep.
Correct.
I think we should just take that off.
Versus changing the policy?
Hmm?
Versus changing the policy instead?
I don't mind losing the policy. We only put it in as an adjunct here because we had a board member who was posting stuff on social media. We should have just simply addressed it with that board member and asked them not to do it. But rather than doing that, we added it to this code of conduct, which it complicated situations. I don't think it helps anything to have it there. So if you want to change the policy, I'm okay with that because I'm a social media voyeur. I don't post anything, I just look.
I'd be concerned about not having something about social media as prevalent as it is now there should be something. It's just too prevalent.
Dr. Ginja, can we update that policy? Sure. To add this one? Sure. If we can do that.
There'll be more of a process. It won't happen overnight, but.
Yeah, it's okay.
Do you want us to wait until the next cycle? Or do you want us to pull it out of cycle and?
When is it due? Do you know?
Well, traditionally we have fall updates and spring updates. Our spring updates I'll usually get sometime the middle of March. And we bring them to the board in May and June and updated. I mean, it will be updated by the time school starts.
I don't think we need to pull it out of cycle because we have it on here.
We'll make a note to then bring that. And maybe 3 months from now, we'll all forget why, and then we'll remember that we had a meeting. And
I've already determined you guys are really good with policies. Full confidence.
So So next steps on the code of conduct. Do you guys want to wait until after we meet next week for our board assessment to sign this?
I think it would be wise, because it might help with clarification. And if MASB has any thoughts about, the process when a board member feels like another board member has violated a code of conduct. To me, if you don't have some sort of process versus if it's informal or not, or if it's just a conversation, then again, things sometimes I think get out of hand and could be nipped in the bud. That's my opinion.
So we'll wait until next week.
Have we made changes?
Excuse me?
Have we made any changes?
We have not.
Okay.
Not that. Okay, next up we have our
So
public.
just to clarify, the policy changes to add 14, but there's no other recommendations for changes for 1 through 13.
As of right now, yes, correct.
After next Monday, there could be.
There could be, yeah.
Thanks.
As of right now.
Make sure I have enough.
adding 14.
Thanks.
John, didn't you have some notes on like 3 or 4?
Yeah, I in fact, I just updated my notes, and it's in our shared drive. Right now, it says copy of code of conduct, but hopefully I'll have the notes from tonight.
Yeah.
And then that at least will be a point that we can, because I do think we had quite a bit of discussion on the top
Yes.
4 or 5,
Yes.
and whether or not we have to revisit those and say, do we want to make adjustments?
Right. Okay.
So
it's-
that's why I'm suggesting we wait till next Monday, and then see if we need to delay another month the signing to get it right.
Good idea.
That's good.
All right, next up, public hearing for Sex Education Advisory Board curriculum recommendation.
Yes, I will actually invite Mr. Chris Marsh to join me here. He is a parent in our district and serves as the co-chair of the Sex Ed Advisory Board. So I have invited him here this evening to help him with this recommendation.
As best as we can moving forward, so thanks for being here. At this time, you have had the opportunity to review the videos, hopefully. It is really just an update to the 5th grade videos, puberty videos for both 5th grade girls and 5th grade boys, just part 1. I want to reiterate that it is just part 1. There were 2 parts of the video. We had a team of teachers who reviewed the videos. You can see from the attachment in your packet that there were 3 videos that were reviewed. A lot of the criteria on this particular document don't apply, but I still wanted to follow the same process that that I use for all textbook and curriculum adoptions. But overall, the video that that the board, the Sex Ed Advisory Board, is recommending for update is literally that. It's just an update. Because the old videos were very, very outdated and available only on VHS, and this will allow us to have a link similar to.
We don't have enough VHS players anymore.
I think they were, some of them are on DVDs. I'm probably like overstating that or being dramatic, but really this is an update just to get with the times so that it's an updated video in front of kids talking about puberty. So there's no changes to program outcomes or expectations. All of that remains the same.
Yeah, there's no change in curriculum. It's just an updated video, but because it is included in our curriculum, wanted to make sure that we bring this to the board. So there's a public hearing tonight. Chris, did you want to say anything?
No, I mean, we're gonna miss out on the tube socks from the old video.
You could probably come back soon. You might want to.
They may not, but they might not.
Yeah.
They are.
Because they would.
So tonight will be a public hearing. So part of that public hearing is to answer board questions. Before we do that, sometimes it's valuable. We have to have public input. If there's anybody who wants to address the board regarding this video, they can do so at this time. And then we'll have another one prior to our next meeting. We have to have 2 public hearings, at least 10 days apart. So between now and our March 12-ish, 14, the next board meeting, whatever that date is, we have our next board meeting. We'll have one at the beginning of that meeting and then ask for board approval for these videos to be used this coming spring with our 5th graders. So before we ask for board input, if there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the board, I just ask that you come up, state your name, preferably your address, and you have 3 minutes to address the board.
I just want to
So you can take as much time as you want, just 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
All right.
I'll start it here, but I'll push up there in a minute.
Jennifer Adams, 4281 Heritage Drive, Hudsonville. I just wanted to request that the videos are easily accessed by the parents. I know last year the teachers all sent out I have a daughter in 5th grade. So last year they sent out a link that we could just watch the video, and I watched it and it was great. And so I signed the permission slip, but I just am hoping that we still have that same visibility. And I was able to talk to my daughter about it before she even watched it in school and answer any questions. So I just appreciate the transparency there, and I hope that that will still be the process.
With all due respect, you'll be pleasantly surprised with the updated video.
Does anybody else want that?
Anybody else to update that?
I just like to agree with Jennifer that this be available online for all parents to view at any time. The idea that we talk about things like sex assigned at birth, that's that kind of terminology that is likely in a new video. I don't know, because I'm kind of confused about this hearing actually, because what is it that I just looked at that I'm responding to? It wasn't really anything, right? So you're checking off the box for a public hearing, but I really have no information. So I'm just at the very least asking that the video, all the sex ed material for the 5th grade, the puberty videos, be posted online on the Hudsonville Public website so that at any time, any parent can go and view it. And I know we hear about licensing. If that's a problem, then I would ask that the transcript of the video be posted online so any parent who agrees to anything about our sex ed actually is fully informed. And I would just also, I got a minute, 37. I would just also like to ask that you take seriously these hearings, not so much as a box to check off, but that as you do it, that we are actually informed. I don't know what's been done before, but I'm confused by why this is called a hearing. Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the board? Go ahead.
Dana Odell, speaking as a concerned parent. I would echo similar comments to Gwen in that the fact that this is a public hearing, from my standpoint, I could have no issue with the video. I've not seen it. There's a lot of talk at other board meetings about process, and I think the process that was followed here, there's room for improvement. I would have enjoyed the opportunity to see the video ahead of time and then be able to offer constructive feedback, good, better, and different, whatever, to the board so that they can use that to make informed decisions one way or the other. I know with the posting that was online, there could have been an effort to at least offer guidance on how to access the video or request access to it, and none of that was done. So I think as far as considering this a public hearing, it feels a little halfway. I would almost consider this be a test run for that, and that an official public hearing number 1 be held after the public has had the opportunity to view the video. That's it. Thanks.
Jamie Fleming, I live in Georgetown Township. I just want to take a moment to thank first off the Sex Education Advisory Board. They are the group that vets the material that is brought to you today. I was at the meeting when this was reviewed and the one prior when they began that conversation. It was a great process. Lots of people involved, lots of good conversation about options, why this video is a good choice. And so I encourage you all to support your Sex Ed Advisory Board's recommendation.
I'm Dave Cotman. I'm a grandparent. I live in Georgetown Township. Yeah, I looked at the agenda on the online and said a public hearing for, and I'm reading it here now too, public hearing for sex ed advisory committee, whatever. I guess I thought if I come, I would hear what's in it or see it or something. Because I can't comment on the recommendation without seeing anything. So, like the others, I guess I'm a little confused. So I think something should be presented to the parents so they can comment, grandparents. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we'll close the public comment section. So again, just to reiterate, the board will be asked to approve the updated videos. If not approved, we'll use the old VHS videos with tube socks or whatever going from there. Again, it is not a change in curriculum. It is an updated from 1985, 6? Sure. It was a while ago.
I think it's a little newer than that, but there were definitely still tube socks, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it simply is not a change in content. It's actually, if you had a chance to see it, I thought it was well done. It's not, it doesn't get into the several of the comments that were made. It doesn't talk about those topics. It's going from there. So, and our goal is to, as always, keep the parents informed on what their kids are seeing before they see it. So making sure the parents are aware going into these lessons, how they're, at the elementary level, the girls are in one room, the boys are in a different room, it's a different conversation. The parents are aware going into that. So, any questions from the board?
So before any child sees it, the parent will have a chance to see the video. And then the parent fills out as was mentioned, as was mentioned, the parent fills out the slip.
Correct.
And says, yes, it's okay, no, it's not.
And it's an opt-in, not an opt-out. So there's a difference between an opt-out versus an opt-in. You have to opt-in to do it versus your parent never filled it out. You got to make sure that.
I thought we had go ahead.
Just listening to the individuals that came up to speak, is there an opportunity for individuals to come into the admin building to look at the videos to provide public comment? The videos are short. I've watched them. They were very
20 minutes
each.
Girls a little bit longer and the boys a little bit shorter.
I would wonder even about putting a link on the agenda so that people look at the agenda and they can look at the video. There's no reason they couldn't see it because it would be difficult for me as an outsider coming to the board meeting. I can't comment on the hearing because I haven't been able to see anything. So
I think from a standpoint that how the video gets shared out there is not our video to share until we purchase it for that purpose for our kids. Knowing, and traditionally when there's a change in curriculum, it looks a lot different when we have a public hearing. So there's the curriculum, you've reviewed it, it's here, it's accessible. This is not a change in curriculum, so it looks a little bit different than an update. I mean, it's I don't know how to explain this. It's the same movie. It's just it's updated. So I think if there's a parent that's concerned with the video, then they will have access to that once we've purchased it before their child would watch it. Going from there, I don't know.
And maybe it would help for the public to know that the board has had access to these videos. So it's not that we are going into this blindly without knowing the content. And again, the legalities of the sharing and how someone could share it, and those are always concerns that we have from a legal perspective.
And we have a sex ed advisory board that was formed with community members, with clergy, with I forget all the categories, but that was done. So the community is involved in reviewing it. Parents get the chance to see the video before they opt in. I think the process is very good. I think the process is very solid. If it were a changing curriculum, it'd be a different topic, but it's just,
I'm just wondering, the videos are very well done and they truly are just updated. I did not find anything controversial and I thought they were very well done and short and to the point. The thing on the agenda is it says public hearing. Did we have to have a public hearing because we're not changing curriculum?
Because it's part of the curriculum, we do. We do, because we looked into that just to make sure, because that's a lesson that is taught, that is required by the state, that's why.
So just another question, just so for understanding, because there's many people who spoke that did not feel that they could adequately speak because they haven't seen anything. There's no opportunity to set it up to where they could come in so that they could review it, so that they could provide adequate comment. Yes, we have all had the opportunity to see it, but what's the purpose of the public hearing? Because you're right, as board members, we've all had the opportunity to view the video, but the public hearing isn't necessarily for us we've had the opportunity. Why do we have a public hearing? It's required. But how can the public comment if they haven't been able to see anything? I guess that's what I'm.
You might be able to respond better. Were you not on the sex advisory board committee before?
I was.
Maybe you can elaborate on what that looked like when the curriculum changed.
Yeah, so when they had it, we had stations actually in this room.
Right.
People could come in and you could look at everything.
Right.
Um,
That was a change in curriculum.
yeah. I mean, they could look at everything, but I don't know if the people here tonight had the opportunity to come in to look at everything. But that's what I don't know.
And change the curriculum, I understand that, but there are persons who have not been through the program before, and they had no reason to look at the system until the children came through it. So I like to see us overexposed rather than underexposed. And it means putting up stations on here so they can look at it half an hour before the board meeting, so they at least know what they're talking about. Sex is such a hot button issue, and I know we can't put all curriculum online and everything, but I think when it comes to this, the more we tell people, the better it will be. So we have nothing, and I know we're not trying to hide anything here, but I think we need to satisfy their desires too.
And Amy, it was the last work session you gave this to us and talked about the transparency that we're striving for with sex ed, and I mean, we're probably making progress on that, right? I mean, I thought it was a really good discussion that we had at that meeting about you were going to
Are you
put.
referring to the website?
Yeah, the website, you're
Yeah.
gonna put it all on there, so
Yeah.
that's coming, right? So-
We would not,
The curriculum won't.
the
we
curriculum
don't-
won't be.
And that, I don't.
And that was also part
nobody
of our conversation at the last.
does that. I mean, you just don't. It changes all the time. I mean, you have a snow day here, you have some, so we just, that's not gonna happen. But there's all the, the data out there and all that all the, whether it's scope and sequence, that stuff is out there.
If I'm a parent of a child, I'd like to at least see the curriculum. That can be your office or whatever.
Yep. That's
And those
their right to
options
do
are
it.
there,
100%.
for sure.
We've always done that.
Yeah.
Always done that.
Always, and that will
You always have to
continue.
sign the permission slip. It's like it's an opt-in.
Yep.
So
And we have
if
parents
the
all the
child
time that
doesn't-
come and look
If the
at it.
parent doesn't sign the slip, they're not there.
Yep.
Just, I have another comment, because I know we can't change that, the videos were fine with me, but I thought the statement that sex assigned at birth was unscientific. But I know that's the world we live in. It's unscientific.
May I ask a question?
No. Not right now. We can address it afterwards. I don't remember that part of the video.
It's just one of the titles of the videos. It said the sex assigned at birth, female sex.
That's not the video we were talking about. That's not the videos we're talking
We
about.
didn't get that one. There were two videos.
It's just
Please make sure that we're
Just
well
the
aware
part
that
A,
there was a
it's
video
just
that was
puberty.
shown.
I feel
Yep.
all right.
Say that again, Mark, that it wasn't in.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't in the video. Like, what did I miss?
That's what I was thinking too.
That's where we're all kind of looking.
How hard would it be impossible, or would it be very difficult to get a transcript of
I
the
don't
video?
know. I'll look into it. I don't know.
But again, every parent has a chance to see the material, all the material, that their child will opt in to see. Every parent.
They can come in and review lessons and
Yeah, that's not the issue. The issue is, that's not the issue I have. The issue I have is we have a public hearing. Well, how can the public comment when they don't have access to?
Well, I think there's two issues there. So some ambiguity perhaps from the public hearing, but again, I don't think we can lose sight of the fact that every parent
That is correct.
will see all material related to what their child will see.
That is correct.
Prior to them seeing.
Prior to them seeing. So,
That's correct.
Okay.
That's exactly. All right. Any other questions?
So we plan on bringing that information online as early as tomorrow regarding the website, but we wanted to have this parents. And I'm sure it will evolve, because we couldn't find anybody else out there that was doing it, so we kind of doing it on our own.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, it was a really good discussion, I thought, at that time. And to Mark's point, some of these things are hot button issues, so we can be out in front of it, opposed to reacting.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Sincere
All right.
thanks to Mr. Marsh for being here.
Yes, thanks for sticking around
Thank
so
you
long.
for
Appreciate it.
staying and coming and enjoying time
In
with
your
us
role
this
on
evening.
the Sex Ed Advisory Board, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so why don't we finish our evening with a roundtable, and I will start with Mr. Hall.
thanks for sending this out, again, our dashboard, a chance to take a look at that, and, but again, trends look good, look positive, so thanks for tracking this. And again, that relates to SOAR, that's how we measure effectiveness in SOAR, one of the ways that we do that. Again, just to reiterate, the math curriculum, the DAC work, the SCAB work, Mr. Marsh is still here, just all very good, very thorough, at a level that I have not seen on this board in this district in the past. And so, just very strong kudos to the team for the work that you're doing, for the work that we're doing across all of these areas of the district. So, thank you.
And thanks again for the dashboard, because in looking at this in just a quick snapshot, not only is it about our scores and our school population, but it's also about those things that we have been consciously working on as a school district and as a community, and that is the issue of housing insecurity and mental health. And it makes me feel a little better to know that housing insecurity has started to decline compared to what it used to be. And I have to believe that's a benefit of the county and the chambers and the additional housing that everybody has seen going up that is not necessarily your typical housing, but is providing a need for a lot of students in our district. And the other thing in looking at this is I am somewhat surprised that the blue envelope, when you break it down by gender, how much males are affected as well as females when it comes to the risk or incidences of feeling like hurting yourself. And I have to believe that's a trend that's not been around for some time. And again, all human beings struggle. It doesn't matter whether you're a male or female. We are humans first. And thank you for the continued work that we're doing on that.
My turn? Oh, I didn't. I was waiting for you to call on me. So there's some interesting things here. I mean, to see in the high school the student-teacher ratio going down. That's encouraging. That's a great trend to see. A ton, almost more than double the number of students were tutored in the fall of 23 versus 22, which is great. How are we doing that with a third of the staff? Do we have we have 29 staff tutors this year versus 86 the year before?
Well, there's a lot of work that was first getting off the ground last year when they started the tutoring program this summer. Remember the conversations? I don't know if it was the summer prior to.
We probably would have been summer prior to.
Could have been,
Okay.
and then what we did from there. So there's a lot of.
That's impressive.
There's a lot of some large, some small groups. We're working through some of the challenges with our federal dollars and how long they will last.
Gotcha.
We're getting there.
Wow. Fewer people doing a ton more tutoring. That's great to see. Any thoughts on athletic participation dropping? Because we've got the numbers from 23 for January. 54% of the students had athletic participation. It's at 44% now. Seems like hopefully it's a typo. That's a pretty significant drop.
Where are you looking? Sorry.
So
He's
last
comparing
month.
last year to this year, or I mean, last month to this month, is that what it is?
Yeah, because it's like last month, 54% of the students athletic participation. Now this month, the one you just gave us is at 44%.
That's about right for the winter sports.
That's right, this is right.
So we're,
there's a lot
so
more.
we're comparing year over year. We're comparing.
Correct. So you look at fall sports that are substantially, there's more sports in the fall than in the winter. We don't have as many outdoor facilities that are usable in the winter. But we do.
Good. We're
extra
not
houses.
comparing those.
I need to change that.
Now I know what I'm looking. I can interpret the data better. Thanks. Good stuff. One other thing too. Again, one of the coolest parts of the job is being able to get into the buildings. And I know we all get opportunities to do that at different times. And I was in at South Elementary last week. And Mr. Greg, their custodian, is far more than a custodian there. He's just he's awesome. And he, on his own volition, put together a bracket challenge for hot lunch. So like they're literally going through like a March Madness style bracket, and the kids vote every morning on 2 meals against each other. And so then he's getting in like guest announcers to come in and read the results. So coach totally got him fired up because Mr. Higo runs such a tight ship there. Everybody's perfect in there. So of course I had to rile him up. In my day, chef salad with ham, big upset win over the corn dog. I was shocked. It wasn't even close. The kids loved the chef salad over the corn dog. But just one of those cool things. He came up with it on his own. Went to Mr. Higo, totally supported it, and it's just really fun to see the whole school every day for a month really getting involved, doing stuff to make school fun. Yeah.
Dr. Vanderjack, on this report, and I don't know if it could even go on this report, or just for the board to know trending data, when we continue to hear about the harassment and bullying, is there a way to trend the incidents that we have either by month or by quarter? So as we look at implementing something, we would start to have pre-data, intervention, post-data.
Yeah,
Is there anything?
Sure. We shared with the board a few months ago the trending data when it comes to bullying and harassment throughout the district. I have to be honest that there's some challenges when people interpret things differently. Fourth grade at one building might be looked at one way, and fourth grade another building. That's the one I see about the high school. They usually have conversations about how they classify things, so it's consistent. We do have differences at the middle school when it comes to conversations. I can re-share that data around what you had.
Like trending, like on a regular basis, just so we can see, is
Yeah.
it staying the same?
So some of it is the
Because I know it's how they
civil rights
report.
data that we have to report, and that's all comes out of our system. Some comes out of our Swiss data, some comes out of our Power School when it comes to what is logged, what entries are logged. Done a much better job as an administrative team. We have regular conversations about, we do case studies, how would you classify this? We have some interesting dialogue between some people that call it harassment, some people call it bullying. Truly bullying is targeted behavior towards somebody on a regular basis, or harassment can be a one-off. So we have those conversations. But yeah, we can look at getting
It
some
would
of
just
that.
be kind of interesting if we could have
Well,
it and start to look, but on a regular basis.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, and to your point, if we do implement something, what does this look like then in 2 to 3 years?
Right. This change takes time, it's not
It
gonna happen
does.
overnight, it's gonna
It does.
take time.
It does.
Sometimes with behavior data, you actually see a spike in
Yes.
behavior, which
Because
sometimes
once
you
they're
need to
educated,
educate,
you
right?
do.
Because that.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you had to log concussions?
Yes.
There were 2 the year before, they started logging them, there were 940 in all the sports just in the fall, because they had to log them.
Amy, outstanding presentation by Matt. Thank
This
you
is a
very much.
phenomenal
And
team.
thank you for all that you do.
All right, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion from Mr. Davis,
Support.
support from Andrew. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.